So if you're not engaged in what you're doing, your cortisol levels are too low. So I've been talking about focusing as though it were the only valuable kind of attention. But actually, mind wandering, which is the enemy of focusing, the term they use in brain science is they are anti-correlated. If your mind is wandering, by definition, you're not focusing, and vice versa. Mind wandering is absolutely essential for creative insight. The creative process demands that, first of all, you gather information, you focus on the problem, you really concentrate, and then you let go. The annals of science and mathematics are full of people who came up with incredible solutions when they're just daydreaming, in the shower, getting on a bus, walking your dog. And that's because during mind wandering, we're able to make connections between remote elements in a new way that has value. That's the definition of a creative act. Of course, if you're going to execute, if you're going to put the idea to use, then you have to go back into focus. But mind wandering is extremely valuable. There's another level at which attention operates. This has to do with leadership. I argue that leaders need three kinds of focus to be really effective. The first is an inner focus. Let me tell you about a case that's actually from the annals of neurology. There was a corporate lawyer who unfortunately had a small prefrontal brain tumor. It was discovered early, operated on successfully. After the surgery, though, it was a very puzzling picture because he was absolutely as smart as he had been before, very high IQ, no problem with attention or memory, but he couldn't do his job anymore. He couldn't do any job. In fact, he ended up out of work. His wife left him. He lost his home. He's living in his brother's spare bedroom. And in despair, he went to see a famous neurologist named Antonio Damasio. Damasio specializes in the circuitry between the prefrontal area, which is where we consciously pay attention to what matters now, where we make decisions, where we learn, and the emotional centers in the midbrain, particularly the amygdala, which is our radar for danger. It triggers our strong emotions. They had cut the connection between the prefrontal area and the emotional centers. And Damasio at first was puzzled. He realized that this fellow on every neurological test was perfectly fine, but something was wrong. And then he got a clue. He asked the lawyer, when should we have our next appointment? And he realized the lawyer could give him the rational pros and cons of every hour for the next 2 weeks, but he didn't know which is best. And Damasio says, when we're making a decision, any decision, when to have the next appointment, should I leave my job for another one? What strategy should we follow going into the future? Should I marry this fellow compared to all the other fellows I married? Those are decisions that require we draw on our entire life experience. And the circuitry that collects that life experience is very base brain. It's very ancient in the brain. And it has no direct connection to the part of the brain that thinks in words. It has very rich connectivity to the gastrointestinal tract, to the gut. So we get a gut feeling. Feels right, doesn't feel right. Damasio calls them somatic markers. It's a language of the body, and the ability to tune into this is extremely important because this is valuable data too. They did a study of California entrepreneurs and asked them, how do you make your decisions? These are people who built a business from nothing to hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. And they more or less said the same strategy. I'm a voracious gatherer of information. I want to see the numbers, but if it doesn't feel right, I won't go ahead with the deal. They're tuning into their gut feelings. I know someone, I grew up in the farm region of California, the Central Valley, and my high school had a rival high school in the next town, and I met someone who went to that other high school. He was not a good student. He almost failed. He didn't graduate, came close to not graduating high school. He went to a 2-year college, a community college as we call them, found his way into film, which he loved, and got into a film school. In film school, his student project caught the eye of a director who asked him to become an assistant, and he did so well at that the director arranged for him to direct his own film, someone else's script. He did so well at that, they let him direct a script that he had written, and that film did surprisingly well. So the studio that financed that film said, if you want to do another one, we will back you. And he, however, hated the way the studio edited the film. He felt he was a creative artist, and they had butchered his art. He said, I'm going to do the film on my own. I'm going to finance it myself. This was, everyone in the film business that he knew said, this is a huge mistake. You shouldn't do this. But he went ahead, and he ran out of money. Had to go to 11 banks before he could get a loan. He managed to finish the film. You may have seen the film. It's called Star Wars. So George Lucas made a decision on the basis of his gut. It didn't feel right to let the studio mangle his next film. It was his integrity. And this inner sense is ethical. It's an ethical rudder. You know, it answers the question, is what I'm about to do in keeping with my sense of meaning, values, purpose, and ethics? That's not a question that we answer first in words. We answer it first in what feels right and doesn't feel right. Then we put it into words. And every leader today needs a strong ethical rudder. So I'd say an inner awareness, inner focus is essential. Then there's other focus, which is being able to read people, being able to tune in to a person. There are three kinds of empathy, and this is empathy I'm talking about. The first is cognitive. Cognitive empathy means I understand how you think about things, your mental models, how you see the world. What that means is I'm able to communicate with you in terms you really understand, you really resonate with. Managers, leaders who are able to talk to other people with good cognitive empathy are able to get better than expected performance out of people because they know how to mobilize them. They know what matters. Then there's emotional empathy. Emotional empathy is an immediate felt sense of what's going on in the other person. And this is absolutely essential too. If you only have cognitive empathy and you don't have emotional empathy, you'll miss the mark. The third kind of empathy is very important too. It's empathic concern. Not only do I know how you think and how you feel, but if there's something you need and I can help you with, I'm predisposed to help. The leaders who have the most loyalty, who people love working for, have all three kinds of empathy. There's an article in the Harvard Business Review called Leadership Run Amok. Leadership Run Amok is about people who may have cognitive empathy but lack the other two. These are leaders who are very good at hitting the target, for example, but don't care about what happens to the people that they manage. They have no feeling for them, and so they demoralize people, or people are ready to leave if they're able. The third kind of focus is outer focus. This is very important, for example, in formulating strategy. You need to understand the ecosystem within which your organization operates. You need to be able to sense what's going to work, what we'll need to do in the future, and so on. And for that, you need a kind of systems view, big picture thinking. The sad story here is actually the BlackBerry. There are basically two kinds of strategic thinking. One is exploitation, the other is exploration. In exploitation, you take a product or a brand that's worked very, very well, and you fine-tune it, you tweak it, you keep making it better because it keeps working for you. That's what BlackBerry did. The danger is if you don't also explore. Exploration means you look widely, you see what's happening, where things are going. You do R&D, you try to come up with the next new thing. And they failed to see, for example, Samsung. They failed to see what the competition was doing. If you don't have an inner focus and an other focus and an outer focus, the danger is being rudderless, clueless, or blindsided. Attention is a mental muscle. It's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and you lift weights, every time you do a repetition, you strengthen the muscle that you're working. Attention can be strengthened in the same way. In fact, I think I'll show you how, if you're interested. It just take 2 minutes. All you have to do is sit straight up. Close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath. Don't try to control your breath. Just watch your breath. Observe it. Try to sense it coming in and out, maybe your nostrils. And watch every breath, the full in-breath, the full out-breath. Start over again with the next breath. And just start again with the next breath. Be fully aware of the sensation. And if you find that your mind is somewhere else, bring it back again and gently restart. Now you can open your eyes. Did anybody notice their mind wandering? Did anybody bring it back? That's the rep. Actually, the exercise is not keeping your mind focused. The exercise is when it wanders, bringing it back. That's what strengthens the connectivity in the attentional circuitry. This is a study that was done at Emory University. And this is a basic muscle of mind. What's interesting to me is that we don't exercise it, typically. We depend on externals to grab our attention. In fact, our economy, in a sense, is built on the grabbing of attention. Habituation is what the brain does when it sees the same old thing day after day after day, walking the same way to work or whatever it is. You don't see it after a while. The brain economizes on attention. Orienting, on the other hand, is opening up. It's whenever the brain encounters something new, novel, and surprising, it excites the brain. And think about it. Every season, there's a new fashion. Well, what is a new fashion? It's actually a minor variation on a basic product. Every year, there's a new car. Well, what's a new car? It's just enough difference to excite the orienting response. So it's the basis of our economy. It's a very radical move to cultivate the ability to manage your own mind so that you can orient at will. But that's exactly what's possible with attention training, and I've become a big advocate of it. One reason is the research. Richard Davidson, who's a neuroscientist at the University of Wisconsin, has expertise in the brain and emotion. And he's found in his research that when we're agitated, when we're upset and angry and anxious, there's a lot of activity in the right prefrontal area, just behind the forehead. Also in the amygdala, the brain's trigger point for the fight, flight, freeze response. When we're, on the other hand, in a really positive state, I feel great, enthusiastic, what a wonderful day, there's a lot of activity on the left side and no activity on the right. Each of us has a ratio at rest of right to left activity that predicts our mood range day to day. He finds there's a bell curve for this, like for IQ. Most of us are in the middle. We have bad days, we have good days. If you're very far to the right, you may be clinically depressed or clinically anxious. If you're very far to the left, you're very resilient. You bounce right back from setbacks.